Now, as many of you guys would know by now, the Hasim Rahman Jake Paul fight has been cancelled. Now, from my knowledge, this is what I have heard. Now, correct me in the comment section below, guys, if this is incorrect. But apparently, Rahman was 216 pounds about 2-3 weeks ago, and in the period of 3 weeks, he lost 1 pound. So obviously, he was about 215 pounds, and they decided, you know what, he hasn't lost enough weight, and that they don't want him to lose so much body weight, like so close to the fight, because that could put a lot of stress on your body, and it is unsafe. Weight cuts aren't good. We often see fighters look weight drained and really dry. It can be very unhealthy, especially if you're not bringing off the weight rightly. You need to, bring weight down gradually. You don't want to just bring a bunch of weight down, in one day. That could really deplete your energy levels, and you won't be able to perform on your best at fight night because you feel a little bit weaker. So Rahman wanted to fight at 205 pounds, and he said, I could make 205, but he did agree to fight Jake Paul at 200 pounds. Now, some people will say this is ill discipline from Hasim Rahman, that he isn't a dedicated fighter. You could argue that, or you also could just say he just can't make the weight. He probably thought that he could make the weight, and I know he did sign the contract, but you know how not just boxers but athletes in general, they can be very optimistic. They often see it as the glass is half full rather than the glass is half empty. So when presented with an opportunity, they're gonna feel like, what, I can take this. And that's probably what Hasim Rahman thought going into this Jake Paul fight. He probably thought, what, it will be tough, but I can do this. I can make weight. From my knowledge, Hasim Rahman fights in the 220s, but I think I was listening to an interview where he said he walks around in the low 230s. Now, that is a big weight cut, especially for heavyweights. Heavyweights don't usually cut weight. They just fight at whatever the weight their body acclimatizes to during fight camp. They will definitely drop, a few pounds, several pounds, but it's nothing like the lighter weight classes unless they're super ill disciplined. They've just completely blown up in weight. I guess you could say an Andy Ruiz blew up in weight in the second Anthony Joshua fight. That's an example. But generally, they don't have to lose a ton of weight if they have, some discipline. It's often just they lose a couple of pounds, a bit more than a couple of pounds. I am probably understating it, but they lose a little bit of weight, and then they're in decent shape to fight. But yeah, to expect him to go from about in the low 230s to 200 pounds, I mean, for a heavyweight, that's a lot of weight to cut. So do you guys just think Jake Paul should just fight a genuine cruiserweight? Because from my knowledge, Jake Paul is, he fights, I think he fights like catch weights. He fights like within 190s, between 190 to like 195. But I'm pretty sure for the Hasim Rahman fight, he was going to weigh in at 200 pounds. So I feel like Jake Paul should probably just fight a genuine cruiserweight where there's no obstacles. None of this trying to, drain your opponents down to where they feel weak, because, you do get the feeling that that was Jake Paul's strategy. Okay, let me beat up this heavyweight in Hasim Rahman, but let me take his physical advantage. Well, you can never fully take it away from him, but let me reduce it by having him lose a ton of weight, and he can only rehydrate to a certain amount of weight, and by the time he gets into the ring, he won't be fully hydrated. So it's possible that, that was Jake Paul's strategy. Oh, let me beat this heavyweight, but he's obviously aware that Hasim Rahman is a pro, he's a real boxer, and that fighting someone that much bigger than you, it's not the best idea. So if I can take any advantage away from him, that's going to work in my favor. So that was probably Jake Paul's train of thought. But, he's had issues now with Hasim Rahman and Tommy Fury. He should just fight someone who can easily make the 200-pound weight class, cruiserweight, where there's no issues, None of this having to cut excessive weight. Someone who is proven that they can consistently make the weight, and also someone who is a decent level fighter. I seen that if Jake Paul were to win the fight, he was going to be ranked by the WBC. I found that quite interesting. Some people were really bothered by that, saying, well, it's a disgrace, Jake Paul shouldn't be ranked, so on and so forth. He's had, very few pro fights, and he hasn't fought any genuine boxers, but, it takes time. We can't expect him in his, fourth, fifth, sixth fight. I don't know what fight he's on, but he hasn't had more than 10 fights. In one of his, less than 10 fights to fight top level opposition, within his weight class. This Hasim Rahman fight was a massive step up for Jake Paul. It wasn't Ben Askren or Tyron Woodley, who wasn't a boxer. Tyron Woodley is a fantastic athlete, former UFC champion, but he isn't a boxer. And he was a little bit lighter. I think Jake Paul was several inches taller than him and had the physical advantages on Tyron Woodley, even though he's a really muscle-bound person. So it's unfortunate for Jake Paul, and it's unfortunate for us, because I definitely wanted to see Jake Paul, get in the ring against Hasim Rahman and see how he would deal with, just a pro boxer and the size advantages of Hasim Rahman. I was thinking to myself, what, credit to Jake Paul if he can beat this guy, because Hasim Rahman is a heavyweight. Even though he had to cut down, he is a genuine heavyweight in terms of how big he is, and he's got real boxing experience. He's been boxing, his whole life, but unfortunately the fight couldn't take place. So should Jake Paul fight somebody on short notice? I never think it's a good idea to fight somebody on short notice, because you have a whole camp preparing for a specific fighter, and then you want to pull in someone on short notice. Yeah, I don't think that's the best idea. We saw what happened in the Anthony Joshua-Andy Ruiz situation, where Joshua, was training for Jarrell Miller, and then Jarrell Miller obviously pumped up on all sorts of drugs, so they have to replace him with Andy Ruiz. And Joshua probably wasn't aware of the strengths and weaknesses of Andy Ruiz, and he probably couldn't fully prepare as best as he could for Andy Ruiz, because he probably wasn't studying him as much as he should have been. He wasn't preparing for Andy Ruiz's strengths. He was preparing to negate Jarrell Miller's strengths. So, it's very dangerous to take a fight on short notice. But, can someone save the day and replace Hasim Rahman? Is Jake Paul willing to fight someone on short notice? Maybe he feels like he needs more time and has seen other guys such as Joshua lose to opponents on short notice and thinks to himself, nah, I need a long camp. But yeah, hopefully he just fights a genuine cruiserweight, so there's none of these issues in terms of weight. There's none of these restrictions in terms of I can't come to this country and so on and so forth. We don't want to hear that. We just want guys to be able to, make it to the country, make weight, train hard, and fight. So it is what it is. Hasim Rahman was too big to make the weight as far as I'm concerned. He was probably thinking at first, I can make the weight, but then realized, it is a little bit challenging. So it happens. I'm not going to slag him off too much. I've seen some people being very critical, even probably overly critical, but, these things can happen, guys. I think I seen Jake Paul talking about knocking out Mayweather and Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, and how he can beat Tyson Fury. I mean, it's just, your usual Jake Paul shenanigans, was it? I mean, how on earth does this guy think he's going to beat Tyson Fury? I mean, absolutely incredible. He has no chance. And he was talking about the likes of Crawford and Mayweather and Spence, guys who are way smaller than him. Guys who could probably easily beat him as well, even though they're way smaller than him. Well, not probably. I'm highly confident they could beat him, even though Jake Paul has the size advantages. They're just way too skilled. Have you seen how big of a puncher Crawford is? These guys are seasoned pros, the elite of the elites. Has Jake Paul even fought a 12-round fight before? Spence has been in grueling 12-round fights against guys like Sean Porter. So we know that guys like Spence and Crawford have the conditioning. Does Jake Paul have that level of conditioning? I don't think so. Yeah, I just had no idea why on earth he was talking about, Spence and Crawford. I kind of understood the Mayweather part because his brother Logan Paul fought Mayweather, but why he was bringing up Spence and Crawford, I have no idea. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video. Like and subscribe the video. That was a blunder. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, I should say. That was embarrassing. Alright, guys. Peace.